45. Brown, 45. Hot, 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 hot.
You are listening to Any Given Sunday, Australia.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Any Given Sunday Australia podcast, the number one podcast in at least 3 households, 1 studio, NFL Australia head office, American Football Australia head office, and right now over in Columbus, Ohio, because we have joining me and Charlie is a young man with a household name back here in Australia. He's got a booming right foot and has taken a hat-trick in cricket. He's the national champion punter for the Ohio State, number 42 for the Buckeyes, Mr. Joe McGuire. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks. How are you guys going?
We are much warmer than you are over there, I've been told. 3 degrees.
Yeah. Woke up this morning to -4, which was and very windy, so that was a tough morning.
Do you still have morning like lifts and things like that? Is that tough to get up?
Yeah, so actually in spring at the moment, I'm 6 days a week, up at about 6, in by 6:30. Yeah, that's my life at the moment. Get 1 day to sleep in, and luckily that'll finish soon, and it'll go to 5 days a week.
Are you on campus?
Yeah. So we're on campus. We're still in university. It's the last 2 weeks of the year, thankfully, and then I actually head home next week. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, that's already got one of our questions, so that's perfect.
I was just going to ask, while we're talking about you're coming up to the end of the college year, how hard is it to balance actually studying and playing football? Because I imagine football's the priority. Am I right? Is that the priority?
I'd say so, especially, well, for me, yes, but academics still very important, and that was always stressed in my household growing up. But for a lot of the guys, it's definitely NFL. A lot of them know that they are going to make the league, so it's sort of where are they going to get drafted. And with the amount of money they make, they're crazy to not prioritize it as the absolute number one. But yeah, they do. There is a strong focus on academics, and actually last year's national championship team had the highest average GPA of an Ohio State football team, I think, ever, which was just under a 3.3, which is about a B+ for every subject, which is pretty good for 125 guys. So yeah, I thought that was pretty impressive. We had a couple of academic All-Americans. I think 95 out of the 125 were OSU scholar athletes, which is a pretty cool achievement.
So do you do advertising for the college? Because you're a great advocate at this stage. It's like you're appearing at a high school telling kids to go to Ohio State right now.
It's a great selling point when you can start saying our GPA is high. So.
Actually, you guys might enjoy this one, actually. But we have this thing called SASO, which is basically student athlete academic help. And if guys haven't done their homework during the season, not only will they send them a text reminding them, but they will show up at dinner and literally drag them across the road to make sure they get it done before they do anything else.
I definitely could have done with that when I was at uni. That would have been very helpful.
I didn't go to uni, so I wouldn't have those problems. But all right, Joe, let's get back into it, mate. We'll go back to right to the start. But one thing I do always like to start with, just to get an idea of you as a human and just the way your mind thinks, is a bit of easy icebreaker. And I think this one will be an interesting one with your lineage and your background. The most famous person in your phone right now, mate?
Well, yeah, there's a few, I suppose. My godfather's actually Rob Sitch, so one of the greats of Australian television, The Castle. Watch that one every Australia Day, even now. A few AFL guys that have sort of grown up around as well, which is cool. But I suppose since I've moved here, Coach Day is an enormous name over here, and then just some of my teammates are just household names around America now, which is crazy to think. But yeah, so there's probably them. So probably Coach Day, but then I suppose Rob, and then actually while I was over here, Nick Rewalt's a big football fan because he lived over in America for a while. So he actually joined the Pro Kick guys for a day when we were in Houston. So had a bit of a chat to him, which was good. But yeah.
He's a Longhorns man, isn't he? He was down.
No, he's actually Baylor. So his wife and her entire family, I think, went to Baylor. So that's in the middle of Texas, in Waco. The stadium's actually situated on the river, so they'll drive their boats down the river and park up and walk in. So
that would be that would be quite a thing to behold. That is,
It
that
is
is
great. They
awesome.
walk in, and then of course they got the tailgating, and you're in Texas where football is life, and you're in Waco, Texas, where respectfully there's not a lot else going on. So they all go pretty crazy for the football over there, and I think that'd be a pretty cool thing to do one day. Go down to Waco.
So, given you're based in Ohio, does anyone on your team have LeBron's number in their phone?
There would be a couple for sure. That'd normally be the running backs or quarterbacks, I'd assume. A couple of years ago, LeBron was on the sidelines. I mean, he was there in a box at the national championship, which was pretty cool. He actually sends us cleats every year as well. We get headphones every year. He sends us a little letter as well, just saying, good luck, be a Buckeye, follow the culture sort of thing. So, and his King James logo is situated throughout the facility as well because he contributes so much to Ohio State. So, yeah, he's awesome.
That's your goal by the end of the next season is to definitely have LeBron's number in the phone. That's exactly the next step. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll go sip on some red wines with him.
Yeah. So let's go back to the start in Melbourne. Growing up, were you just an average kid, just kicking the footy, playing cricket? Was that your childhood?
Yeah. So obviously, football's been a pretty big part of my life. My brother actually on the radio one time kindly pointed out that I get more disposals playing NFL than I did playing AFL. But I did enjoy playing. I played at school, played at Paran Junior Footy as well. They sort of put me on the wing, so I had a tank, but I was just skin and bone. Weighed, even in year 12, I was probably like 75 kilos at 6'2", so there wasn't much of me. But one thing I did have going for me was when I got the ball, I could actually kick it fairly accurately and with decent distance. And I had good timing. So, kicking was always my strength with footy. And then I was actually probably better at cricket. I played a full season in the first, pretty medium pace, but had a bit of swing, bit of swing to me, line and length sort of thing. So, yeah, I love my cricket as well.
Were you an all rounder at all? Like how were you with the bat?
I would say I was an all-rounder for most of my career. In the first, we had a pretty strong batting lineup, so I came in at 8 or 9. But then when I played local cricket, like in under 15s, under 16s, I was a representative batsman, batted at 3. So,
right,
I was decent with the bat. I was probably I'd say one of the better number 9s in the APS, but I wasn't opening the batting or anything.
One of the better number 9s in the APS. That's a great one to have
on
the sporting TV.
Put that one on the Wikipedia, that one.
You say you were an all-rounder. There was a game that I saw, just going through some of your stats. It must have been a representative game under 17s. That your team got rolled for about 110 and you were 74 not out. So I'd say you weren't too bad. But there is a game I do want to talk about. We've already kind of semi-mentioned it. It was back in Feb 2022, away to Mount Eliza. Jay McGuire with stats of 8 overs, 4 maidens, 5 for 10, and finished off the tail, mate, just nice and quickly.
Yeah, so that was pretty good. I used to fill in actually for Dermot Brereton's team. So Dermot and Dad were great mates dating back to when they were in their early 20s. So for Dad that's probably 60 years ago. So they've been great mates. They're most of their adult life. And then Derm loves his cricket. He's the captain down at Heather Hill. Pretty good team actually. They've won a few flags. That year actually, I think it was that year I played in their grand final. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done. But it's a bit of fun. It was actually the last 3 balls of my innings of the day for me. I think I bowled 2, and then the last one was caught at 4th slip via 7th slip. Oh. So they had 9 in the slips for me. They got this tradition where they turn their hats inside out and put it on their head. And I've bowled one of the worst balls of all time. But this poor kid who's probably 15 or 16, he's just stuck his bat out to dry. And it's gone to 7th slip, who's just bowled it in the air. It was in slow motion. I nearly ran down and punched him if he's going to drop my hat-trick ball. It was a dolly as well. Like, it was not a hard catch. And he's popped it up in the air, and then in comes 4th slip, just diving one-hander on the ground, and he's taken it. And, I probably carried on a little bit, given it was sort of, 4th grade or 3rd grade cricket or something in the country. But, my first and only hat-trick. So
hat-trick is a hat-trick. It doesn't matter where. It's like a hole-in-one. It's the biggest deal there is on the planet.
Exactly right. Exactly.
So-
Right. I still celebrate my hole-in-ones at mini golf though. So
Yeah, that's right. So, growing up in the McGuire household, it's not the most average upbringing. I mean, you're talking there, your dad's mates with Dermot Brereton. You would have been surrounded by like A-list folks for most of your life. Footballers, every great footballer, you would have known them. What was that upbringing like? Was it in the house? Was it pretty normal? Or did you just accept that my world's a little different to the kids I go to school with?
I suppose, it was just normal for me. And mum and dad never made a big deal out of it. It was just sort of, so-and-so's coming over, whatever. And it was just normal for me. And then slowly as I got older, I'd sort of be with my friends. I'm like, oh yeah, I was trying to think of an example.
There's hanging out with Dane Swan.
Yeah, like Dane Swan, for example. Nathan Buckley's coming over and they're like, excuse me? I'm like, yeah. And then, obviously, as I got older, I realised it was a little bit unusual, which obviously comes with its ups and downs, but it was fantastic. And then I'd say just day to day family life was pretty normal. We woke up and if we were lucky, Mum would make bacon and eggs in the morning. Who, by the way, phenomenal cook. I absolutely miss Mum's cooking over here. My goodness.
Shout out to Mum.
Dad, when it was his day to cook, we'd get Uber Eats, I think. He's known for his one meal he ever made was he was trying to impress Mum when they first started dating, and he made a roast. So that's his claim to fame. In the kitchen, that is. But yeah, I'd say pretty normal upbringing. Caught the tram to school until Mum started missing us and insisted on driving us a little bit later on. So yeah.
So how instrumental were your parents in the decision to put Aussie rules down and think about playing American football instead?
So I didn't really decide that until I was about 19, 20, and that was during COVID. So I think it was pretty well established that the AFL probably wasn't going to be my path. But no, Mum and Dad were both incredibly supportive of whatever we wanted to do. Obviously, Dad encouraged footy. But if that wasn't the path we wanted to take, then he was fine with that. And actually, Xander didn't really play much footy after. I think he had a little break between year 9 and year 12, and then came back in year 11 or 12 for a little bit. But he still loved the game. Like, he supported it. He went to the footy. He analysed it. Like, he absolutely loves it. Just didn't love playing it as much. And Dad was fully supportive of that, 100%. And I'll sort of admit it now, but Xander was probably a slightly better cricketer than me, maybe. But they basically said, whatever you decide to do, we don't care as long as you absolutely give it your best. And that means 100%. So Mum's thing is she doesn't do lazy. So they'll 100% support us and back us in no matter what it is, as long as we absolutely do our best.
So what did it for you then? What was that decision during COVID when you started to think, I'm going to go to college in America and play football? Because it's a huge decision to make, but you have a look at how it's gone. Obviously one of the best decisions you'll ever make in your life. Yeah, so
it was interesting. It was in COVID. And growing up, Mum and Dad sort of promoted an international sort of lifestyle to us. I mean, ever since I was probably 10 or 11, Mum or Dad were saying, you could go study overseas, you could go to this university for this or that one for that. And we were lucky enough that we could travel a fair bit in our upbringing, so you sort of knew what it was like overseas. But basically, I was having a kick of the footy with one of my mates. His name's Lockie Swanee. He was the captain of Carlton's VFL last year, I think. And he basically just said to me, like, mate, you've got a decent leg, and you love your sport. Why don't you give pro kick a go? And I hadn't really thought much about it before. I mean, Dad had mentioned it to me, but I hadn't really thought much about it. And he sort of gave an explanation. He's like, yeah, I think this is what you need to do. There's a guy, Nathan Chapman. So went and spoke to Dad, who, of course, Dad knew Chappie. So he sent Chappie a text and said, Joe's sort of interested. Don't know much about it. Like, do you reckon we could have a chat? And then Chappie said, yeah, mate, come down to the local oval and we'll have a little kick or something on a Saturday. So I didn't think much of it. I was like, yeah, whatever, we'll head down. And I get there and we have a bit of a kick. And I didn't realise I was actually trying out for pro kick. So I get there and I've got, I'm sure you probably know these guys, Brett Thorson, James Burnip and Cam Peasley are all kicking. So Brett was probably one of the top 2 or 3 punters in the league this year. James Burnham's a top 3 draft prospect this year, and then Cam Peasley was on his way to Utah. So 3 of the biggest legs to have gone through pro kick in the last 4 years. And then there's 75 kilo me sort of trying to kick a drop punt for 3.5 seconds. But thankfully, Chappie saw that I had something to work with, and he said, come down and have a kick with some of the boys, which I did. And talking to them and being around it, there's a whole lot of excitement because we're around guys that have committed to university, so they're all excited, and your eyes sort of open up to what college football is. And it got a lot more real because there's people in front of me accepting scholarship offers, and then 2 weeks later they're on their way to America, and then guys that I met a month ago are now playing in front of 100,000 people in college, and it was just insane to see. And then I got a bit obsessed with it and went home and did my research, searched up on YouTube, the crowds and the sport and, punters and all that sort of thing. And after the first few weeks, then Chappie put me in contact with Dave Tunavai at Conquest Fitness. And he sort of pulled me aside and said, all right, mate, like you've seen NFL and what the players look like. That's not you right now. So we're going to get you in the gym and you're going to put on some weight and get a lot stronger. And so, I went and worked with Dave Tunavai, who he worked me out relatively hard at the start. And then I sort of said to him, like, I want to be really good at this. So I went all out with Dave. I did. At my peak, I was probably doing 10 training sessions a week.
Wow.
So 3 or 4 of those were punting, and then 6 or 7, sometimes 8 were in the gym with Dave. And he worked really hard on building my strength, mental toughness. And then part of that mental toughness was actually on Saturdays, he'd get me in the ring for 12 rounds of boxing. No headshots, because you've got to be careful of that. But I'd actually be in the gym, and he works with a lot of rugby players. So I'd be fighting these 6'5" Tongan guys who, sort of took me to town in the ring. But that absolutely built my mental strength and physical strength and toughness, so that no matter what they throw my way over here, I was ready.
And 12 rounds, that's a lot of time in the ring. That's exhausting.
I mean, it wasn't all in the ring. It'd be the first 5 rounds would be sort of punching a bag, and then it would be do sit-ups for 3 minutes. But then the last 4 to 6, depending on Dave's mood, would be in the ring.
Yeah, wow.
No headshots or anything. And, we built up to that. It wasn't just 12 straight away, but...
Straight in there, mate. How are you, mate? There's a Tongan standing over there ready to go.
But no, it was fantastic. I loved it in the end. And I mean, I've gone from being 75 kilos, and I did a bit of a dirty bulk and got up to about 105, but we're back down at around 95 now. So that's sort of where...
I ask, just as an outsider to the craft of being a punter, what does the additional weight work actually do for your kicking? Yeah, so a bit of it is, it's a lot of it's power. So lower body especially is power to kick the ball. The other thing is, we can run fakes. And if that happens, I need to be strong enough to get through a linebacker who's genuinely trying to murder me. Yeah. And then as well as that, if there's a bad snap or something, then, I might need to pick the ball up. I can still get tackled. And then on top of all of that, in the off season, we work with the linebackers, the running backs, the quarterbacks. So we do all the same things as them. And a big element of that is actually just gaining respect, because we're not on the field with them. We're not getting hit. We're a very specialized position. And if we can run with them in the weight room, or at least be close enough to them, there's that level of respect that you get. So it is underratedly important, I think. So did that come naturally, that instinct, or is that something you learned from other, like when you got in that system, people saying, you train with these guys because it's part of being the team? Is that communicated to you, or do you just pick that up?
Yeah, so I think Pro Kick, so Chappie, Johnny and Tim do a pretty good job of getting you ready. If you listen to them close, like they tell you, like, this is what is absolutely expected of you when you get to college. And no matter what you think makes sense, or whatever you think it is, or how you've seen it on the internet or whatever, it's not. Tim, who went to college, says, no, it is really hard. And you will have to do this. You will get hit. You'll do things you don't want to do or that you think doesn't make sense, but that's just how it is. And coming to Ohio State, actually, I think one or two of our strength coaches actually was Tim's strength coach as well. So he was able to give me a really good insight to what it's like. And, the weight room training is just next level. Like, it is unbelievable. I mean, you see the size of some of these guys, they're running, Cody Simon, our linebacker last year, he's running a 4.5 or 4.6 40-yard dash at 115 kilos. Wow. Like these guys, their athleticism is absolutely insane. And then he puts up 25 reps of 100 kilos on bench press. Like it's just a different level of strength.
You can definitely, if you follow your social media, you can see that little dirty bulk that you had where you went from that 75 up to the 105.
Yeah.
But it's good, mate. You look good solid. So
Yeah, I'm back down to 95 now, thankfully, but it took a little bit of time.
you're looking trim. You're looking good from this side of the camera, mate. So back to the pro kick journey. Did you know much about college football and NFL beforehand? Because those that are lucky enough to catch a ball from one of Chappie's spirals, they're finger breaking. So were you ready to go down there and catch balls, or was that the first time you'd actually
I
done one?
wasn't ready for the Chappie snaps.
No, they are brutal.
Yeah, they come in fast and sideways, and you just don't know where it's going to go. So they're absolutely brutal. I grew up watching a lot of NFL. We'd always, over summer, Dad, Xander, and I would sit down on the couch and we'd watch the playoffs because the time zone sort of match up. It'd be in the morning. So we grew up watching the Patriots a lot, especially. I mean, they're always in the playoffs. College football I knew of, and I knew it was big. I just didn't know how big. And it was never really on my radar. I never really paid any attention to it until I joined Pro Kick, and then all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my goodness, like what is this?" But yeah, I definitely grew up around the sport a lot.
And then it was July 2023 that you finally commit to Ohio State. How did we land on the Buckeyes? And we know Johnny, we know him well on this show, and how much he actually does. Was it he just gave you a call at 2 a.m. like he does everyone else and says, "Mate, you're off to Ohio State"?
No, so it was a little bit different. Initially, I think it was Johnny or Chappie pulled me aside and spoke to me about UCF, so Central Florida, and that they wanted me to go in and do a similar thing there. Excuse me. They wanted me to go in and do a similar thing at Central Florida. So I was getting pretty ready to go there because, I'd been doing Pro Kick for 2 years, and I just thought, no, I'm going to get over there and figure it out from there. And then 2.5 weeks later, Chappie tapped me on the shoulder and said, like, "Oh yeah, I want to talk to you about something." So yeah, Chappie hadn't spoken to me about UCF. It was Johnny, and Chappie tapped me on the shoulder and said, like, we want to talk to you. I was like, "Oh yeah, like Johnny's already told me about UCF," and Chappie sort of went like, "Yeah, just come talk to me later."
Yeah.
I sort of went, "Yeah, all right, sure, whatever." He's going to tell me to work on my drop punts or something. And then after training, he's like, "Yeah, let's go for a walk." So went for a little walk with him, and he's like, "Yeah, so what do you know?" And then I said, like, "Yeah, UCF. This is what they want me to do." Blah blah blah. And he's like, "Yeah. There's another school as well that sort of want you to do something similar." And in my head, I'm thinking like, yeah, it's probably like a decent school, but maybe a little bit lower because UCF's Power 5, Power 4 now. So very good school. And he's like, "Yeah, mate, it's actually Ohio State." And I sort of went silent. I was like, what do you mean it's Ohio State? And he sort of explained it to me and sort of mentioned how he wanted me to go in and back Jesse up and how he would have 1 or 2 more years. And then, if I could get good enough, then take his position. And from, the second he said that, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to Ohio State. I'm not giving up that off. I'm not giving up that chance. If it goes wrong, then it goes wrong, and I can sort it out from there. But I'm not giving up on Ohio State." And he made me go back and do some genuine study and made me list out 4 or 5 non-football reasons why I wanted to go to Ohio State, which I did very, very quickly. And then met my parents and sort of spoke about it, and then it all happened pretty quickly. It was probably a month and a half or 2 months later. I was on a plane and I was at full camp at Ohio State.
So the first time you saw campus was when you're stepping off the plane, or not off the plane, but
no. We actually, just after that conversation, there was a Pro Kick trip. I'm sure they've told you about the Pro Kick trips to America.
Plenty of times.
Yeah, so I went on one of them, and Jesse flew down to meet us in Houston, and he met with me, and we sort of spoke about Ohio State and everything, and he watched me punt just to sort of validate what Chappie said in the eyes of Ohio State. Just to have a look, just to say, like, yeah, he doesn't suck sort of thing. And then Chappie went, "Yep, well, we tell the truth every single time." And then I flew back with Jesse for like literally 24 hours. And then so I saw a little bit of campus. He drove me around very, very briefly. And then I went to the facilities, had a look, just went, "This is just absolutely ridiculous." I'd seen Collingwood facilities my whole life, which is unbelievable. But, you get here and it's just, I mean, the money that goes through the place is absolutely insane. And then, I met with a couple of the coaches and I flew. I then actually had a trip with my parents for 2.5, 3 weeks over in Europe because it wasn't finalised yet. I wasn't definitely going to go to Ohio State. And then I stayed up there a fair few sleepless nights when I was over on that trip, just getting it all sorted. Left that family trip early, flew back to Australia, said my goodbyes, and ended up, at Ohio State.
What was it like though? Because you finished high school. Am I right? Like you finished up school in like 2018,
Yep.
which is quite a while ago now.
Yep.
What was it like having to go back to class as part of all of this? Obviously, you're excited about the football, but to be back in a classroom, was that a bit of a shock?
Yeah, a little bit. It was a little bit. I suppose when I first got here, I mean, I went straight into fall camp, which is extremely intense. It's sort of 16 hours a day, and then you stay at the team hotel. So it's just non-stop, 24/7 for 2.5 weeks. And then towards the back end of that, Mum actually flew over and helped me move into my apartment. And then from there, Mum drove me to a few classes. And because the weather was nice and everything, all the students were walking around campus, and it genuinely felt like the movies. I step into class, and I've got the accents going and everything, and I've got my little football backpack on, and it genuinely did feel like the movies for a little bit. So that was pretty cool. It was a bit surreal. And then, just get back into class and eventually learn to hate it again. And the academics. And I got into it. And as I said, Mum and Dad always put a big emphasis on academics growing up. So, it was important to me to do as well as I could. So, yeah.
But you also had your football homework to do. All of a sudden, you're going to have to be watching tape. You've got to be in a football classroom as often as you're in a academic classroom. How hard was that to get up to speed with?
It took a while. I mean, in terms of non-punting related film, I'm still getting used to it. I became friends with a fair few of the position players last year, or over the last couple of years, and I sort of sat down and watched some of their film with them, and I still just can't really wrap my head around it. Just before the Rose Bowl, I sat with Will Howard, our quarterback, and said, like, mate, just run me through what you're looking at. And he said about 25 words that I was just like, yeah. Thanks for trying, but yeah, okay. But I'm all over punting now. But I was very lucky that I had Jesse Mirko ahead of me, and he really showed me the ropes in every single thing, not just football, but just general life in Ohio and America, the Midwest. But yeah, I'd sit behind him in meetings, and he'd explain things to me, and we'd sit down and watch the film together, and he explained what's good, what's bad, what things I might not have noticed. Especially, obviously I know catch the ball, kick the ball. I know how high and far I want it to go, but then things related to the block spot, operation time, the scheme that's going on in front of me, the different checks that they make. Having Jesse there was just unbelievable, and I probably wouldn't be in the position I am now if I didn't have that year behind him.
I love hearing that because, like you said, everyone just thinks, mate, you're a punter, you just see ball, catch ball, but there's so much more that even the punter that has to go through, seeing holes and what, the checks and all these kind of things you have to work out. So I love hearing that and just getting an insight into, it's not just see ball, kick ball.
I mean, people don't really realise that, we might have, 4 or 5 base punts that are in there, but within those punts, there's different variations. There's different calls, different codes, as you said, different checks. And, by the time you get down to, very minuscule changes, but there could be like 25 different variations of punt just for any given week. That doesn't mean that it's 25 different types of kicks for me, but for me and the other 10 people on the field, different things can happen at any time. Like, it's very rare for 2 punts to actually be the exact same because different things. You've heard who was it? I think it's Peyton Manning talks about one of the calls that they make, and it's like 25 words long. It's not just go out and kick it that way.
Yeah, and each word means something different that's going to happen to a different player. So, yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned a bit about how Pro Kick, it's more than just see ball, kick ball for them as well. They want you to, list 4 reasons that are not football related as to why you're going over there. And it's more about life for them and setting you up. So knowing you were in almost the family business in media back over here, but what are you studying once you've got over there?
Yeah, so I'm doing business and media in sport, so haven't veered too far from the family business there. Just sort of go back on what you said. I think Pro Kick does a very good job of looking out for the individual holistically. So not just going over football, which most guys, they come to play football, but then Pro Kick sort of, says, well, what about life after football? Because it's pretty unlikely that you're going to make the NFL. There's 32 jobs in the world, and there might be 2 a year at best, maybe 3. They'll send people to different schools based on their personality and what subjects are good. And that was one of the things I said about Ohio State was they had this degree of business and media and sport, and they had a good media department as well. So that was one of the reasons I said, I want to go here. I think Pro Kick do a really good job of that, and make sure your academics are up to scratch as well. So it's not just all about football, as you were saying.
I love the idea of after your NFL career, obviously, that we see a Joe McGuire up in the ESPN studios just beaming out NFL into Australian households. That'd be elite.
That'd be nice.
So the 2023-24 season finishes up and Jesse actually transfers out. Did you know about that leading into it, or was that a bit of a shock?
No, I knew before he made the announcement. So Jesse became one of my best mates over here very quickly. We'd share rooms with each other before games. Anytime we travelled, actually, I was in a room with Jesse. So I spent most of my time that I wasn't in the classroom with him. So yeah, he told me a little bit before, but not too much before. And obviously I was very supportive of his decision because it was what was best for him. And then he sort of said, good luck, go win the job. So it was.
You straight after that, you're in a battle for the top job. So how was that whole process leading up to it?
Yeah, it was interesting. The spring straight after Jesse transferred, there wasn't really anyone that I was competing with. There was a guy who came in who was a punter and a kicker, but more of a kicker. So it was really weird. But then after spring, when I went to Australia, actually, they brought in Nick and who's another Australian, and they brought in a guy called Anthony Veneri from Buffalo, who had started there for 2 years. And yeah, from there it was straight competition. So we got into fall camp, and it was literally whoever does the best is going to play. Simple as that.
So, take us back to your first game. You win the top spot. You're on. You're going to play against Akron, also from Ohio. Your first game is in front of 102,000 people. Is this correct?
Yep.
How do you calm your mind in that situation just to be able to walk out there, let alone kick a football?
Yeah, so I suppose that was one of the good things about backing up Jesse is I did get to warm up. I mean, it's very different, but I did get to warm up in front of that crowd. So I got to feel what the atmosphere was like and get used to that. And, obviously no one's watching the backup punter, warm up on the sideline while Jesse's out there, but you sort of pretend that they do. Or at least my mum's watching me on the side. So I got sort of used to that feeling of what it's like to have, all those eyes around you at least. And then, when I went out there, obviously I was pretty nervous. Cam Johnson, who's at the Steelers and went to Ohio State, who I work with quite a lot now. He was actually on the sidelines with me, giving me some advice. And then one of my good mates over here, Brad Robinson, was the long snapper for Jesse. He was giving me some advice as well. So that was nice. But when I did walk out there for the first punt, which was actually on the first drive of the game, I stood there and I walked out. I saw the crowd and I sort of blacked out for a second. My eyes went a little bit fuzzy. And then my long snapper, who is unbelievable, threw like one way wide out in front of me. And I just had to catch it and kick it as fast as I could, which was probably good because it just didn't give me any time to think about it. But yeah, the first time I went out there, my eyes went a little bit, they sort of went, woo. And then, and yeah, it all just happened.
You mentioned your mum being on the sidelines. Have the folks been able to travel a bit and be there for much of your playing?
Yeah, so I've been pretty lucky that they've been able to come over. Dad works a lot of the footy season, so he comes over a bit later. It was actually a coincidence. I mean, Nick got named as the starter before I did, the week before, and then we had one last little bit of competition, and they made the change, thankfully for me. So Mum was just over here to visit me, and then she was leaving the next day, and I said, Mum, lucky you're staying for an extra couple of days because I'm actually going to play. But yeah, I mean, this year Mum and Dad came over mid-November, and they watched the last 2 home and away games, and then they stayed for the rest of the playoffs. So they watched six out of my 16 games this year.
And so they must have been just ecstatic to be on that ride with you.
Oh yeah, they loved it. My brother came over for the final game of the home away season, and then also for the national championship too. So it was nice to have the whole family together, which probably happens once a year now, unfortunately. But yeah, they loved every second of it. Dad just back to being a fan, which is pretty cool. He's dressed up in his Ohio State gear. He's got my jersey on and everything, so that was pretty funny. And then, Dad just loves his sport, and Mum loves supporting me and Xander. So, yeah, they loved it.
You used to think that it was a last-minute change. Like, your life is completely different over that last-minute change, all right, you're in.
Yeah. Yep, completely different. It was, yeah, I'm very thankful for that last-minute change for sure. So, yeah, it was unreal.
You got to play in some pretty big games. Obviously, the playoffs is is forefront. But besides the playoffs, is there any game or any stadium that really stands out in your mind?
Yeah, there's a few. Obviously, the game against Team Up North, or Michigan, we're not allowed to say that word though, is probably the. I mean, they call it the biggest rivalry in all of sport over in America, and it is. The hatred for them is incredible and justified. They're no good. They're no good, those people. But yeah, that is. I mean, you walk into our facility and there's 3 different countdown clocks for that game. If we win, we get a necklace that's got a pair of pants on the end of them, made out of just solid gold. And that the story is back in the 30s, early days, before the 30s, Team Up North used to beat us a fair bit because they were a more established football side, I guess. And then from 1930, I can't remember the coach's name, but he sat the team down and said, we put our pants on. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else. And the next 4 years, they didn't score. So we absolutely murdered them. And then from there, I mean, the rivalry was strong before, and then it got even stronger then. And ever since then, you get a pair of gold pants if you beat that Team Up North. But I mean, we're not allowed to wear blue in the facility at all because that's their colour.
This is like some Bloods and Crips territorial shit out of LA. That's
yeah,
you
exactly.
can't show your gang colours. That's amazing.
No, you genuinely can't. I mean, and one of the cool things is actually, I love this. So our campus, the size of it is actually slightly bigger than Melbourne CBD. So it's enormous. But the week leading up to that Team Up North game is called Hate Week. And every single M on campus is crossed out with a red cross in tape. So it's a speed limit sign, the M's gone. McDonald's, the M's gone. Stadium, the M in stadium gone. Literally, I mean, have a look. You can Google it. Crossed out M at Ohio State. Literally every single M. You like parking signs where in tiny little font it says 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. The M's are crossed out. It's awesome. So that's the big game that everything leads up to. So that's probably the biggest one. Penn State, we played in front of 111,000. That was massive. It wasn't a whiteout, but it pretty much was. Everyone dressed in white. The atmosphere was pretty good. And then actually playing in Oregon, despite it was a stadium record of 60,000, so it's a smaller stadium. But the way it's designed is that the acoustics are just incredible. And that was the loudest stadium I think I've ever been in. That was just deafening. And unfortunately, we didn't win. Questionable call at the end. Will Howard had his knee down with a second on the clock, but anyway, that's all right. We beat him in the Rose Bowl anyway by 100 points, so that's all right. That atmosphere was just unbelievable. That was crazy. Besides the result, it was one of my favourite games to be a part of.
Any snow games?
No real snow games, but Tennessee in the first round of the playoffs was -12, so that was pretty tough.
And so what's that like kicking when it's that cold?
Yeah, so it's like kicking a brick. It's pretty hard. There's the point. I kick a lot of drop punts, so Aussie style. So if I miss my drop and I hit the point, that can hurt a fair bit. But the other thing is that a lot of people don't realise is the offensive and defensive line actually put some Vaseline on their arms just to stay warm, and that can get on the ball, so it can be a little bit slippery to catch. But the other thing is -12. Cold air it constricts, so the ball actually deflates a little bit, so it's a little bit harder to kick it as far, which is pretty annoying for punters. But other than that, yeah, it's just you go out there and do your job.
Don't break your foot is pretty much the main goal out of that one. But you mentioned that game against the Team Up North. We won't obviously say it, but it was a bit of an upset loss just before the playoffs. So how was the feeling around the team after that game, heading into playoffs?
So horrendous. It was awful. I mean, that game means more than just a game. I mean, you can't compare it to Collingwood Carlton or anything. Like it's tribal. It is. I mean, it goes back to Ohio and that state actually going to war over the Toledo Strip in the 1800s. So like, it's a real hatred. And we haven't beaten them since 2019 now. We won the 8 before that, so it's not too one-sided. But so we haven't beaten them for a little bit recently. And it was devastating. I mean, a lot of our star players came back. Jack Sawyer came back to beat them, and he didn't do it. And he's one of our best players almost ever, probably. It broke everyone's hearts. The fans as well were devastated. And then they had the audacity to go and plant their flag in the middle of our stadium, which caused an all-out brawl. Actually, pepper spray was involved. The police came on and pepper sprayed some of the players because it was getting pretty full on. And then afterwards, the locker room was just dead silent. Like that was insane. And the thing was, it meant we didn't make the Big Ten playoff as well. So then, we just had to hope that the committee kept us in the playoffs, actually, which they did, thankfully, obviously. And then after that, we didn't go in on the Sunday or Monday, I think. And then on the Tuesday, we had to get back to work. But what we did, we had a team meeting, and everyone came in, and then we had a bit of a chat about the game. And Coach Day said, "All right, everyone out except for players and me." And it was about a 2-hour open discussion that, it got pretty fiery. Like people had a crack at each other, and people said some things to Coach Day as well, which he handled incredibly well, and was very honest. Everyone was open and honest as you can imagine. And then at the end of that conversation, everyone, it was a pretty religious team last year, so everyone prayed together. And then I think it was our centre and our quarterback sort of stood up and said, "We're not going to let them beat us twice. We're going to go out there and win a national championship now. Like, we'll put this. It hurts. It sucks. We all trust me. It's not lost on us. But now let's go and win a national championship." And we did.
That's right. You went on an incredible run after that. You beat Tennessee. Then you took out the Ducks.
Yep.
Which must have felt great.
Yep.
And then the Texas Longhorns, who there was a lot of talk about how good they were.
Yep.
Going into that.
I suppose the thing about Tennessee was their home ground's called Neyland Stadium, and they were carrying on saying, we're going up to Columbus, we're going to Neyland North, we're going to checker the shoe, which is they checker their stadium in orange and white, and they're carrying on saying how tough they are. And then their players come out because they're in the SEC, the warm weather, it's all nice, cute football down there. And they've come up and they've run out of their race with their shirts off to show us how tough they are. And the funniest thing about that is they got down to their end zone and all put their shirts back on. So we're like, "Oh yeah, good on your heroes." And then we went out and put 21 on them in the first quarter, and we obviously ended up winning. They were a very good team, but we had fire in our bellies and we went out and killed them. And then Oregon, the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, flew over to LA, one of the most historic bowl game. And it's unreal. Like you can really feel it in the stadium. It was phenomenal. One of my favorite games I've ever played in there too. And then Oregon, the only undefeated team left in the league out of 132 or something. And then they beat us by a point or 2 points or something, controversially at home, their home. And then we went out there and just killed them. Like we genuinely killed them. It was so one sided. I think they might have had negative rushing yards for the game, which is crazy. Wow. 8 sacks or something. We just killed it. We put our twos out there in the end of the game. And then, like you said, with Texas, the talk was we have a very fast, explosive, athletic team, and so do they. They could really keep up with us with that. Their punt returner was actually a bit of a game changer for them. He didn't like to fair catch the ball much because he could just run. He was insane, agile, fast, and did a great job. So everyone was, absolutely on their toes. And, you watch the game. We won by 14 points, but that doesn't tell the story of the game because it was, what was it? We were up by a touchdown with 2 minutes to go and they were inside 10. Like it should have gone to overtime. And then Captain Jack Sawyer out of nowhere sacks his old roommate, Quinn Ewers, on about I think it was the 8-yard line or something like that. And he fumbled and Jack picked the ball up and took it back to the house and won the game for us in, one of the most famous Ohio State players of all time.
You're giving the rest of your team a lot of credit for that run, but you were playing really well through that as well. You were instrumental in the team's success at the most important time in the season. How did that feel for you personally after all that work that you'd put in to get there, to feel like you are making a big contribution to the team?
Yeah, it's pretty cool, especially in closer games, which is more towards the end of the season. You feel like you're doing a little bit more. And, it's nice getting a bit of praise from our teammates because your stats don't show it all the time. There's a type of punt called pooch punt, it's a short distance punt where if you kick it too far, it's bad, really bad. So you want to keep it within sort of 35 yards, which statistically doesn't look good, but, if you drop it inside the 10, it's a nice thing to do. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. The Texas game was probably my best game. I got special teams player of the game that day, which was pretty nice, especially because their returner was so good and so influential. So to feel like I helped the team out at an important stage was a pretty nice feeling.
one thing, obviously, the national championship game is what we're going to get into next. But you said it before. No designated trick plays called this year. No fakes. What's going on there? Do we get one next year?
We didn't really need to. I mean, we've always got them in the bank ready to go if we need them. But it never really came down to us needing to do it. So, our defense is really good. So as long as I could put them in a decent enough position, we sort of just let them do their thing, let the other team punt the ball, and good luck stopping our offense, sort of thing. So, if it was there if we needed it, but luckily we didn't. So yeah.
And just looked up the stats: 62-51 overall, all time against that team up north. So you do have the better record overall, which is a nice one to have over them. But that national championship week, that whole week must have been pretty huge. Was it for us over here, the AFL Grand Final week? Is it something? Was it as normal as you could, or did you kind of embrace that it's going to be different and just get around that?
Yeah, I think we embraced that it was different for sure. And the thing that was different is that in the playoffs, there was actually 10 days between each game instead of 7. So you had to navigate that a little bit with your training and, how much do you train? You don't want to get sore, but you also don't want to undertrain as well. And same with being in the weight room, like how hard do you go? You can't lose your muscle because it's, the playoffs they go from the start of December until January 20th. It's 6 or 7 weeks. It's half a season. It's just for, 4 games. So that was interesting to navigate there. But yeah, we sort of embraced that it was different. It was the national championship week, but then, we go to training and we do the same 19 or 17 to 19 periods that we do every other time. We punt period 1, then we do field goal the next day, and then both on the Thursday. The most special thing for me though that I loved was I had my parents there for one. My brother flew over. One of my best mates flew over, and then another one of my best mates actually met me at the ground. And he flew in. He was starting his new job as a private equity guy in Miami, and he started his new job at 7 a.m. the day after the Natty, and he flew in and flew out in the one day, which was unbelievable.
Awesome.
And just to have all of them around me and then obviously win the national championship, it was absolutely one of the best weeks of my life, if not the best.
Well, the game couldn't have gone much better for your offense. So, from the outside, the pressure's off you a little bit because the offense is clicking so well and having such a great game. Had a great 51-yard punt in there, looking good. Were you able, as your team was playing so well, to relax it all and enjoy the moment, or were you just locked in until it finishes?
So although we didn't end up punting a lot, every time we get to third down, you're in next. So that's the expectation. So, every time we go on offense, I'm warming up. I'm catching snaps from the long snapper. And then, it gets a third down and the whole punt team gathers on the sideline ready to go. Because, if you don't make it, you don't make it. We're out there. So that happened a fair few times. Like our third down conversion just happened to be really good. But the other thing is that I'm the holder for field goals as well. So, extra points isn't as much pressure. But we had 2 massive field goals that we had to go out for. So, I almost have to be not more locked in, but that's such a precise skill with almost no room for error at all. So
was that almost one of the harder things to learn because you grew up kicking a footy? There's obviously it's a different way of kicking, but was learning that skill and becoming precise with it actually that would have taken a lot of work?
Yeah, catching it and putting it on the ground, it looks really easy. But the difference between a really good hold and a really bad hold is literally half an inch or an inch. You put it in the wrong spot, and then my kicker actually described it really well. It'd be like lining up for a drive, and then just as you're about to swing your club, someone moves the golf ball, an inch away from you. It completely messes it up. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure to hit the spot. I was pretty bad at it when I first got here, as my kicker let me know about it. But obviously I worked really hard on it. Went back to pro kick. It's a skill that we work on at pro kick too. And then, got a lot better at it. And then, you don't realize you can't just put it down. If the laces aren't facing forwards, you have to move the laces forwards, and the tilt has to be, the perfect degree, and it has to be on the spot, which is a really small spot. There's definitely a skill to it that probably people that don't hold don't realize, but yeah. And then of course the nerves of it, the ball's coming pretty fast. You're only 8 yards away, and it comes, I'm 15 yards away for a punt, and the snap is 0.7 seconds. So, half the distance, it's probably, 0.3, 0.35 a second from snap to catch. and then from snap to catch to kick is 1.2 seconds. So it's all really fast with no margin for error.
One thing I always, because you're right, there's transferable skills to catching and kicking, so that works out all right. Where being down in that, how do your knees and your ankles in that feel being in that position for, a minute, 2 minutes if they've iced you or things like that? I'm cramping just watching you.
Yeah, when I first started, I looked pretty uncomfortable. And as we said, I was a little bit heavier, so I was a little bit more uncomfortable as well. But yeah, no, you get a little bit used to it. But if it takes too long, I'll just stand up and shake my legs out a little bit and then get back in the position. But I've gotten a little bit more used to it now because I hold every day for a while. But yeah, it took a little bit of getting used to for sure.
And then the post-match and then the celebrations that come with it, how was that whole thing? I have heard from a couple of sources that you've let your hair down a little bit and enjoyed yourself the past few months.
It was a fun 2 weeks following the Natty, that's for sure. But actually, Nick and I were the last two off the field. My brother brought an Australian flag, so we got that around our backs and took a few photos on the field. And I went up and saw my parents, and we were just enjoying it. And then we run inside, and the the change room smelled like a cigar factory. Every single person's got a cigar lit up and smoking it. And then Coach Day comes in and talks to us and is going crazy. And we had this thing where we built a pyramid at the facility, and every single game and every single training session was a block that we added to the pyramid. And then, of course, the last block was that gold block of winning the national championship if we got there. And he presented himself with the final golden block. So each player got presented a different block for each practice session throughout the year. And then he got the last one, which is pretty cool. And then from then on, music was playing really loud. All the boys are getting around each other. I actually had an interview with Channel 7 and Channel 9 News. So he got on the phone as well and had a chat to them and some of the boys who were pretty happy to be involved. And yeah, we were just sort of dancing around the locker room and having a good time. And then we went back to the hotel, and it's a night game. So by the time we got back to the hotel, it was like 1:30 in the morning. We didn't go to bed, but
I was going to say straight to bed, obviously.
So I had my mates. Our parents were there, had my mates there. And actually, one of the great Ohio State fans of all time, Glenn Archer, was actually there.
Really?
So, yeah, massive Buckeyes fan. So he came over, which was awesome to have him there. So we went up and had a few beers, and then Mum and Dad went upstairs to go to bed, and me and my mate and my brother stayed downstairs and actually introduced the Americans to the shoey, which they loved, sort of. And then we had a pretty decent sized night. Probably got to bed at around 5, and then I was up at 8:30 the next day to pack my bag, and we headed back to Columbus. Slept on the plane. We got our rings, our fingers sized for our rings that morning. So my fingers were a little bit puffy that day, so that might be a little bit. And then we flew into Columbus and landed, had a bit of a nap. And then that night was one of the best nights of all time. We have this place called Town Hall in Columbus. It's probably the best bar here, and it's not on campus. It's off campus, but it's on campus sort of thing. And basically, it was a Tuesday night, but it was just packed. And because we're on the team, obviously, I was straight to the front of the line. Which, keep in mind, this was insane. It was minus 23 degrees outside, Celsius, and the line was just never ending. And we go straight to the front, and we walk in there. I've got one mate who's got a bucket of like 10 beers in one hand and a bottle of tequila in the other, and just goes, which one do you want, mate? And so that was a pretty big night. You have champagne going absolutely everywhere. It was just unreal. I mean, it was exactly what you'd expect. It was just fantastic. And to have my brother and one of my best mates, an oldest friend from back home, been mates with him since we were 2. So to have those two there was just unbelievable.
So have you been home since then? Have you come home and hung out with mates back here, or have you just stayed over there in the States? Yeah, so after that national championship, we got 13 days break, and then we were straight back into preseason. So that first week, not a lot of time to rest at all.
No, it's not. So we go straight into winter workouts. So the new freshmen come in, the seniors go out, and then we're straight into winter workouts, which is just running and training and just as hard as it gets. Like it's you're there at 6 a.m. You might have heard of these things called mat drills, which are just pain. That's the point of it, is to be as hard as it can be mentally, so that whatever gets thrown your way in the season, it's not as hard as the mat drills. And then after winter finishes, we go straight into spring. We get spring break, which is a week, and then from there we go straight into spring training, which is basically like in-season practices without the games, obviously. And then right at the end of spring, which is this upcoming Saturday, we have our spring game, which last year we had 80,000 at. It's just an intra club, but everyone comes down and watches that, and then I get to come home.
So, how is it mentally, given that you climbed the mountaintop? You actually did it. You placed that gold brick on top of the pyramid. How hard is it psychologically, having done all that work and achieved what you wanted to then go, right, got to do it all again and presumably do it better, because now you've got a target on your back now and everyone's coming for you.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things, we lost something like 13 starters to the draft. So it is a really new team and it is a different team. And that was one of the things with one of our first meetings back was, this team hasn't done shit. Last year's team won a national championship. This team hasn't done anything. So, there's half the room, not half, but, probably 30% of the room haven't won anything. They got to watch it, but they weren't part of it. And then another thing is, a lot of teams have won a national championship, but not many have won two. So we're out there trying to chase two and then hopefully three. But yeah, it took a little bit probably to click into gear, but I think we're absolutely into that now. You want to win everything. And, as we mentioned before, we didn't beat the team up north, and that's absolutely an expectation and a desire that we all want to get. And then we also haven't won we won the national championship, but we didn't win our conference. So we want to go and win that as well. So we've got a lot of goals to tick off between now and the end of the year.
So not getting too far ahead, because I know you're taking it one game at a time, obviously. You're not even thinking about the whole season. You're only focused on what's right in front of you. But when you get to the end of your college career, is the goal to enter the draft and play in the NFL? Is that the dream that comes from this?
Yeah, for sure. Especially being at a school like Ohio State, where so many guys around you get drafted, so many guys end up in the NFL. I mean, I think we'll end up with 15 guys this year that make it to the league. It's sort of the expectation is that is your goal, and that would be awesome. That being said, I do have a long way to go for sure. I need to improve a lot. I've still got 3 more years of college football, so hopefully I can get there. But as you said, my goal right now is to do the best that I can to win the job again for this season, and then to perform as well as I possibly can for the team. And hopefully the byproduct of that is making it to the NFL eventually.
So if you were talking to a kid right now who's a bit into his footy here in Melbourne, and is probably thinking of playing for the AFL or dreaming of that, what would you say to a kid like that about the experience of taking those skills overseas and doing something like playing in a national championship?
Yeah, so firstly I'd say follow the football dream. If you can make it to the AFL, that's your dream as a kid. You go and do that for sure. But if you're thinking about joining Pro Kick, it's the best to see. I mean, I was in Nashville with in spring break with actually James Rendell, who I played against in the national championship. Him, Oscar Bird, who just committed to Ole Miss, Ollie Straw, who's at West Virginia, and then Nick Haber, Jesse Mirko, and those guys who were all at Vanderbilt, Matt Habel, who all went to Vanderbilt. And we just sort of sat around and just went, joining Pro Kick was just the best decision we've ever made in our life. Like, we were genuinely trying to think like what comes close, and it's changed our lives absolutely for the better. But just the things we get to experience are just unbelievable. So if you have a leg or you have any desire to go to college overseas, there is no better program arguably in the world than to go to Pro Kick, because you get to play college football, you get to go to American college, which in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree, just this college system murders the Australian university system. It's not even close. The social aspect of it is just worlds apart for one. But I go on campus and there's real camaraderie. I think the sport has a lot to do with that, because everyone is a fan of all of the teams. It's football is the biggest, but there's all the other teams. I mean, I was at a volleyball game a couple of days ago. I go to the soccer games as well, and I'm friends with all those guys, and they get big crowds as well. But people, actually want to make friends. People sit on the campus and just talk to each other. I mean, from my friends and even my brother's experience at Melbourne Uni is they haven't really made many friends because you go to class, no one really cares or wants to talk to you, and then you leave, and then you end up with a piece of paper, and that's great, whatever. Whereas over in America, especially, people talk about college for the rest of their life. It's a massive deal. Like the Ohio State team up north rivalry will never die. One of my best mates went to Harvard. The Harvard Yale that'll never die. Cal Berkeley versus Stanford. It just goes. It goes forever. It's not like Australia where once you get your piece of paper, it's you got your piece of paper, go get a job sort of thing. It means a lot more. It really does mean a lot more. And then even my brother went over to St Andrews on exchange in Scotland. And even then, he probably has more mates from his 6 months there than he does in Melbourne Uni. So I think that's the Australian unis have a lot to learn from that for sure. But to go back
you
to
have
your
that
question,
wonderful thing where people have traveled from all over America, all over the world, and they're all away from home in this place. It's like they need to become a family for each other, and it's just such a beautiful environment.
100%. And as you said, because they come from everywhere. And even if they are from Ohio, Ohio is a relatively big state. They might be from 4 hours drive away. You can't just commute daily. But the dorm culture is really big here. So you have to do 2 years in a dorm. And then, you get to meet a whole bunch of people and you get that camaraderie. You walk to class. You've got the college bars that everyone goes to. I just think it's fantastic. I think it's the best overall well-rounded system, I think, in the world by far.
So
Mate.
One other thing I want to ask before we let you go, you've been very generous with your time. What do you make of the sense of a backlash in America now that too many Aussie punters are coming over, taking local jobs? How does that feel to hear that you're almost too successful at what you do, that they're trying to ban foreigners getting in?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, what's their argument? Oh, these guys are too good at kicking. Why should we let them in? I mean, it's just a stupid argument, really. Chappie and Johnny do a good job, and Tim and all the other coaches there do a fantastic job of developing punters. If you want to get better training, you're more than welcome to join Pro Kick. You don't have to be Australian. If anything, it's made punting better. I mean, the way I sort of explain it, we grow up kicking a ball. Since I've been 3, I kick a ball with my dad and my friends. These guys throw a ball. So, we don't have a whole bunch of Australians competing for, quarterback. I mean, there's probably more Americans in the NBL than there is Australians. I mean, are they taking our jobs? No, they're very good at it. So shut up.
Yeah, they really stopped T-Mac's basketball career there.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you want to get the job or you want to earn a scholarship, then you train harder. I don't really know what to say. You need to start earlier. I mean, I sort of get the frustration, but everyone misses out on some things. Train harder. I don't know. It's just the colleges don't care where you're from, especially at a place like Ohio State, for example. They don't care who you are, what you look like. If you do the better job, you'll get the job. It's as simple as that. So, boiling it down to Australians.
Just be better. That's 100%. I'm actually going down the path that Mason Cox took my job. I was destined for the AFL, but he stuffed it for me. So,
if it wasn't for those tall Americans coming over, you'd have had a 300-game career.
Oh, no. Yeah. 5'4", I was definitely a chance of taking his job.
I was going to say, we might have a chance if I was on your shoulders.
Yeah. Joe, you couldn't have been more generous with your time, mate. And I've to be honest, just loved sitting here and listening to you. You've embraced the whole Ohio State, culture and that team up north and all those kind of things, the rivalries. And like you said, mate, you're a national champion forever. So I love what you're doing over there and can't wait to follow you the next few years and hopefully beyond, mate, because I love what you're doing. And even if it's not in the NFL, you've got a big future wherever you go, mate. So appreciate you coming on and giving up your time and speaking with us, mate.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks very much, guys. It was great to be on.
Cheers, Joe.
We'll be following you long into the future, I hope.
I hope so.
Cheers, mate.